morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Mowat. I'm a clairvoyant psychic and a contactee, and I come to you from the beautiful Campbell River, British Columbia. And I'm so excited to share one of my favorite beaches with you. And as you can see, it's absolutely gorgeous. We've got cruise ships in the background. Well, they're going to be coming in a few minutes. They're just over there right now. Anyway, I'd like to share with you an encounter I had on I believe it was early May 2014. Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio would have a better idea about the precise date. When I was writing down my diary, I'd forgotten to write what day it was, so I did miss that part. Anyway, during this encounter, I was driving to a friend of mine's house, and I was living in Mission at the time, and my girlfriend also lived in Mission. And as I was driving from my house deeper into the countryside, going along the hills and through the forest to my friend's house, I began to feel extraterrestrial and multidimensional energy. And what this felt like was, it was an early May day. It was absolutely beautiful. It was sunny. It was bright. It felt like the energy was alive and tingling up above me, but in one concentrated area, but slightly towards the forest. I thought, okay, I'm feeling extraterrestrial energy. I'm probably going to sense some later, or I'm going to have an encounter later, or something along those lines. Now, at this point, I was having a lot of very regular contact, and I didn't think much of the fact of, well, feeling ET energy. And so, when I pulled up to her house, and I went inside, I had the great pleasure of meeting Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and his lovely wife. Now, we all sat down in the living room, we began to have tea, and as we were having tea, I could really feel ET energy shifting more. I felt like it was stronger and more alive. And then I noticed a shift in Dave's energy. All of a sudden, he looked like he was more focused, he looked like he was more aware, and he kind of stopped the conversation. He's like, I'm getting buzzed. I need to go out in the woods, I've got to go outside, or something along those lines. Now, part of me said, okay, can I go with you? And he's like, you can go with me, but you can't go with me, and you can't go with me. And he said that to the woman who owned the house and to Mrs. Spaced Out Radio. And so, as he and I left the house, we walked outside and we walked around the house towards the back field of the farm. Now, as we were walking, we had 4 dogs with us, 3 of which were quite large, and 1 being a smaller dog. And it was quite interesting, because directly behind the house was a little field, and behind that was forest section. And as he and I walked in towards the field section, I remember saying to him, Dave, I need you to be aware that we might end up seeing something, that I'm getting a lot of energetic presences, that I'm really sensing that there's a high possibility of something going on, or something along those lines. And anyway, he seemed to be like, okay, that's fine, let's keep going. Now, we walked for about 10 minutes, and as he and I were walking, it was pretty interesting because when you enter the forested section, there's a lot of trees, and off towards the left, over towards the roadside, there's a little ravine before it gets to the neighbor's property. Now, this is a very small road. There were only actually 2 homes that lived on this street, and as he was walking one way, I started walking down towards the ravine. But then I felt energy shift, and I can't remember whether Dave called me back or whether I just walked back on my own. And then when Dave and I had walked back together, we noticed that it was suddenly very quiet. All 4 of the dogs had disappeared, and I'm quite a short person, to be very honest with you. And so I noticed there was a stump in front of me, and I walked up to the stump and I got on top of it so that I could be a couple feet higher up. And when I did this, Dave was pretty close to me at this time. He's like a foot or 2 away, and I remember saying to him, oh my goodness, or oh my god, do you see that? And directly ahead of us, 200 or 300 feet in the woods, I noticed that there was this brown extraterrestrial entity that was standing square facing towards us, very aware of us. It had these large, beautiful black eyes, and they were almond-shaped. It was not wearing clothing. It was very aware that we were there and that we were coming towards it, but it was at a comfortable distance for a daytime encounter. Now, as this was happening, here's Dave standing beside me, and his energy was doing a couple different things at once. It felt excited, it felt a little bit of concern, it felt as though he had this like 100 different emotions going at once. I remember thinking, okay, cool, we've got a being in front of us, that's fine. But I was really fascinated because I thought, hey, this is the same kind of tan being that I've seen lately, like the little brown guy, like a few of the other ones, and I was really excited to see one so clearly, and not only in front of me, but I had the opportunity that I could walk up to it and go talk to it and touch it if I wanted to. Now, when this was happening, a minute or so after we noticed this initial being, I noticed a second being appear behind the first one, but it appeared slightly behind it. Oh, pardon me. Oh, look, a bug. Now, an interesting thing happened. After Dave and I noticed the first being, a minute or two later, another being appeared directly behind the first being and off towards its right. And this is really fascinating in a lot of ways, because you could tell by the way the energy was moving around these beings that they were trying to be considerate of us. They were trying to approach us in a way that we felt not only comfortable, but felt safe within their presence. Now, while Dave and I are looking around and we notice, okay, there's no dogs, and okay, there's not a lot going on. The sun was shining through the trees. I believe there was a very gentle breeze going on. Things of that nature. And the next thing that happened was the being began to telepathically communicate with us. Well, more so with me than Dave. Dave was kind of going, oh God, oh God, oh God, or something along those lines. And I remember as I'm talking to this being, I'm feeling its energetic resonance coming over towards me, and I have this beautiful bond going on with it where it's sending information from its mind to my mind, and here we are having this communication. It was saying things like that it was a little bit fearful of the dogs because the dogs it viewed as being very unpredictable. They had very interesting energy, very earthy energy, but a very protective energy on the same hand. And they were also trying to be considerate of Dave, because they had mentioned that if they had decided to walk closer towards us, or if they had made it so they were a lot closer when they initially made themselves known, that Dave had the possibility of having cardiac arrest or some form of heart problem. Now, one thing that I have mentioned previously is the fact that these beings were slightly concerned and fearful of Dave, because he is someone who does have a lot of energy to him. He has a lot of protective energy, a very strong presence, and they wanted to make sure that he knew that they were not a threat, but they also did not wish to feel threatened by more dominant energies. Let's say that's probably the best in which I can describe it. Now, these beings were quite lovely, and as Dave and I were talking, I was also talking to these beings, and they were just exchanging some minor information like that. Now, I wanted to walk up to the beings and to go closer, but I remember as I wanted to step down, Dave was not comfortable doing so. So they had sent us the message of, okay, another time, and that was fine. So these beings were standing there, facing us square as I'm facing you, and as I got down off the stump, and as Dave turned, we began to walk away, but we could still feel their energetic presence right there. Now, he and I went, for some reason, from there, off towards the right, which would be behind the other neighbor's property, or off to the side of the other neighbor's property. I'm not really sure which. I didn't know their exact property dimensions or where their property line was. And as he and I did that, I remember looking around and going, okay, there's a lot of energetic presence around us. It felt as though we had many extraterrestrial and multidimensional beings within our vicinity, but as though we were not able to see them, as though they're operating at a vibration that was either not perceivable to us, or as though they were cloaked, or something along those lines. Now, I should mention that while we were seeing the two beings a few moments ago, there was absolutely no plane activity. And as Dave and I walked over towards a neighbor's property, all of a sudden there was a lot of plane activity overhead. We saw small personal planes, we saw some airplanes, things of that nature going on. And if it's really windy, I do apologize. It wasn't windy when I was walking with my dog, but it seems as though the wind has picked up a little bit. Ooh, I'm gonna turn the camera this way so you can see the beautiful cruise ships. Aren't they gorgeous? Now, anyway, getting back to it, Dave and I were very excited to see these beings, and we were a little bit confused when we felt such strong energetic presence around us, but these beings not showing themselves. And so he and I decided that it would be best if we just walked back towards the house. For some reason, we didn't go back to the exact spot we were a few minutes ago to go look to see if those beings were still there, which, looking back at it now, seems a little out of character for both him and for me. We did, however, go back a few weeks later. I think it was 3 or 4 or 5, something along those lines. And when we went back with Mrs. Spaced Out Radio and the owners of that property. And when Dave and I got to the exact location where we had seen the two beings, we noticed that these beings must have been about 6 or maybe 7 feet tall, something along those lines, because of the way everything was situated and how tall they were in comparison to the green plants that were nearby and things of that nature. So I am so excited to have gotten to talk to you tonight, but I have a very strong feeling it's going to rain soon, and I hope you have a beautiful summer. We'll talk to you soon. Please check out my website, www.samanthamowat.ca, and I would also like you to check out my other YouTube videos. I'm trying to have done about 200 of my experiences before October, November of this year occurs. And one more thing, I wish you peace, love, and light. Have a great night. Bye.